Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first podcast of Students Abroad Answer, brought to you by Medlink students. I'm joined here today by Doctor Saif Rustum, who's going to be telling us a little bit about his own experience in becoming a medical professional and also his role that he now has at Tbilisi Medical Academy, one of the most popular schools for international students in Georgia. Good afternoon, Saif.
Good afternoon, Tom. Thank you very much for the warm welcoming and the introduction. I'm very delighted to be with you today. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I'm sure we've got a lot of people listening in now that are really interested to hear about your experience because you made it. You went abroad, you did the studies, and here you are. You've got the title. And I'm sure it's quite an exciting story that you've got to tell us all, right?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of hiccups along the way, as many of us have had in any of the specialties, I'm sure. But the secret is not to give up, and here we are. We made it.
Okay, so yes, every great achievement comes with a fantastic story behind it. So we'd love to hear a little bit about yours. So where are you from, and what made you decide to go for medicine?
Absolutely. So, originally I was born in Iraq, and during my childhood, my parents just moved to Jordan. That's where I was raised. In Jordan, I was also accepted in the medical school, which was quite a difficult journey and difficult to get into medical school in Jordan. But due to the changes in the situation at that time, my decision and of course the family's decision was to move to Georgia. Of course, I found Georgia when we were just as tourists. We came to Georgia before our decision to move to Georgia, and we just fell in love with that country. Especially for me, for example, because I love Lord of the Rings and just the scenery and the amazing old fortresses and the old churches just remind me of Lord of the Rings as I was living in Lord of the Rings. So to me, I was biased, and it was a biased decision for me, and I almost immediately accepted moving to Georgia. And yeah, I got accepted in Tbilisi Medical Academy. That's where I studied to become a doctor, and that's where I graduated. And here I am working with Tbilisi Medical Academy.
Fantastic. And obviously it must have been quite a difference starting your medical education in Jordan. What were kind of the big differences that you saw then going to study at an international school like Tbilisi Medical Academy?
So to tell you the story in complete honesty, the university that I studied in Jordan was quite large. The campus was huge, and of course it was one of the top medical universities in Jordan. The huge difference that I saw between Georgia and Jordan was the quality of teaching and the amount of care that the teachers in Georgia, and especially in Tbilisi Medical Academy, and the administration of Tbilisi Medical Academy. The amount of care that they show for the students, especially knowing that these are international students, that they left their families behind, and coming to a whole new different environment, whole new different culture, whole new different language. So I felt like I was at home. And also, of course, the quality of teaching was quite huge because we were divided into smaller groups that made it possible to make the lecturer focus on the students' needs and each needs and catch the different
so
problems.
Important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. And from that point, then, what made you decide when you finished and you got the degree, rather than looking at registration in various countries, you made the decision to actually get employed through the university to help more people, encourage them to achieve the dreams that you've achieved?
That's a great question, Tom. Thank you for that question. Actually, during my last years of studying medicine in TMA, I met such great teachers and professors that taught me, and I looked up to them as role models because of their professionalism, because of their charismatic way of teaching, because of their always openness to adopt new ways of teaching, to focus on the students. That's what affected me and changed actually my mind. And changed my focus. My focus was more on becoming a surgeon, but I found a new passion, a newborn passion of mine during those years where I just found that teaching was my new passion, and of course research, of course, as well. And I was looking through the opportunities where I can go on, but immediately TMA just caught me, so to say. And I started actually tutoring in TMA, which is a great opportunity for a student to get experience during the
Okay,
study
so
years.
during your actual studies, you were tutoring as well.
Yes, I was tutoring students who are juniors, who were juniors to me. I tutored physiology and immunology and genetics, and I got immense experience during the last 3 years. You can imagine that 3 years is not a short period to get experience.
Of
And
course.
and I was also enrolled in certain programs as a student. For example, I got enrolled in becoming part of the curriculum committee in TMA. So one of the students, of course, it depends on lots of things, as it is now by elections. Back then, it was depending on certain factors, and one of them is the academic achievement and the willingness and motivation and so on.
Okay, great. So getting a little bit of insight there, and all very positive so far. But of course, a great achievement like this doesn't come without its challenges. What were some things that you felt were quite difficult for you, and how did you overcome them, or how were you able to overcome them?
Of course, going to a new country is quite challenging for an 18 years old or a 20 years old. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter, even for a 30 years old, in my opinion. It doesn't matter how old you are. It will be a challenge anyways. But how much support you will have from your family, from your friends as well, and from your teachers and from the administration in your university makes the immense difference between day and light, and between having a great experience in that country or having the worst experience of your life in that country and deciding to leave that country. So I was quite lucky to have all that I mentioned, the family, friends, and the amazing Tbilisi Medical Academy staff and academic staff as well, professors. I, of course, faced problems with the language at that time, but with some time, it's basically you'll face those issues during the first few months only, when you're trying to find out and figure out
very normal.
trying to figure out what's going on and so on. But you immediately then figure out who knows English, which is a huge part of the country knows English, especially the younger generation are quite fluent in English, and it becomes a non-problem issue. It's not an issue anymore. Other than that, I haven't honestly faced any more issues, except for maybe the language barrier at the beginning, but later on, especially coming also from an Asian background, Middle Eastern background. Georgia is quite in the middle between Europe and Asia, so there are characteristics of the population that is between the two. So you will find whatever you would like in the population and their characteristics. So you won't have a big problem in adapting.
Yeah, no, we do find that it's such an interesting blend and sort of diversity in Georgia, isn't it, between the West versus the East. And it's just both kind of combined. You see all of that history and that culture mixed from the two, which I think makes it quite suitable for international students.
Absolutely. International students that come from different backgrounds, different religions. You see, even in one of the most famous regions in Tbilisi, in the capital of Georgia, you see a mosque, a synagogue, and a church right next to each other. They are in the same place, and that's called the Old Tbilisi. It's one of the most famous areas of Tbilisi, and it's just peaceful. There's no way that any issue would happen. That's exactly the meaning of cohabitation and living in peace with each other.
It's amazing to hear it, and I know obviously Georgia is quite far east, and a lot of people, especially from Western countries and like from the UK where I'm based, they think of these eastern places as being quite closed off and quite reserved, and just kind of thinking in one direction. And it's really not the case, is it? Especially when you say things like that, with having all of these cultures of religion and all of these buildings all together in a peaceful square. It's a great thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with time, even the more generations are going, the more generations are getting open-minded even further, as the case with all the countries around the world, that I believe that Georgia is going into the right direction.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we see this as well with the international groups that we have of students going in. Obviously, our input is quite small when it comes to the whole migration of people going to countries. People don't just go for medical school, but it does have a big effect. And we do see year on year people with these larger communities. So let's go back to the university. And we mentioned obviously about support. For yourself, you obviously made it as a student. You said before that you faced some challenges and some things before. How important was not the support from your family and friends, but the support from the university itself? Because this is something that we don't see from every university in Europe, but we have seen a lot of it from Tbilisi Medical Academy. How vital would you say that was for your success as a doctor?
I believe, in my opinion, this was the most and one of the most important factors to my success and to the success that I'm in, and all the achievements that I have done into furthering my career that I chose to myself. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult to achieve whatever I have achieved, because it was during my student years, it was just open doors. Wherever you go in the administration, you find support. They're always hearing you. They're always trying to find a solution for issues if there are issues that come up. They're always trying to become better. And that's what I like the most. They don't achieve, especially in Tbilisi Medical Academy, and not just because I'm working for them now, but during my student years, whatever I have noticed, which made me actually choose Tbilisi Medical Academy to stay in, is that they don't have a certain point where after that point they say, okay, we achieved whatever we achieved, and that's enough improving. There's always improving. And even today, I just finished work, and I came back from work into this lovely interview. And just now we had our Belgian partners who came from the Netherlands to work on our curriculum and to improve the curriculum even more. And we have them 3 times and 4 times in a year to come to Georgia and train our teachers, train our staff members, and also work with our staff members and with our curriculum committee, with our advisory board to improve our curriculum and improve the student-centered approach that we have set for ourselves as a goal as an institution.
All right. And you said they're based from Belgium.
Yes.
So what perspective uniquely do you think that they bring, and what differences do you see from them coming obviously from a very Western European, the center of the European Union there?
So that is what's quite interesting, and thank you for this question, because it's very important. As they don't just bring their experience and put it as a standard for us to work with. No, we work with them closely to figure out, basically, in the Georgian context, in the context of East Georgia as well as the international community, how should we graduate doctors that wherever they go, whatever country they go to, they will be able to work perfectly, be as professional as they are. It doesn't matter which country they go to. It doesn't matter which region of the world that they go to, but to graduate the best medical experts that we can graduate. And they work closely with us into tailoring the medical curriculum that we have into that. That's why what we have is whatever is called the PSI medical curriculum, which is patient-centered, student-oriented, and integrated medical curriculum.
Fantastic. Now, just for those of you listening at the moment, when you hear us say TMA, this is Tbilisi Medical Academy. Just so people obviously know that we're not just saying some sort of random thing, so they've got the understanding. Now, when it comes to TMA, how many years is it now that you've actually been there as a student, from when you started as a student up until now? How long has that been?
So I spent 6 years as a student, which is the period of the medical programs. This is 6 years. And added to that, I have finished already 2 years working with them, 2 years and a half almost. So in total, 8 years and a half.
Fantastic. And you've obviously mentioned that they're always changing and developing. How much change have you seen over those 8 years or so now?
Immense changes. I cannot even start to describe the changes that we had the first semester that I started, and now I wish I would go back as a student now and experience what our students now in the first semester they're experiencing. It's an immense change, even. And I don't say just the infrastructure and so on. Of course, that was also updated and everything, and the campus was updated as well. But the most important is the techniques that are used, the tools of teaching that are used, the way of moving from teacher-centered classroom, where the teacher is the center of the classroom and only the teacher speaks, into more engaging, more student-centered approach, where the students are the ones who actually pull the carriage of learning, and the teachers are just walking by them, guiding them, mentoring them, rather than just feeding knowledge to them. It's quite an amazing change.
Fantastic. I think what a lot of students worry about, and I'm sure some of the students listening will be nodding their heads to this, is they're worried about the amount of independent learning, and are they going to be led enough by the teachers? So although, yes, you're saying, of course, the students lead the education and the teachers guide it. Now, are they guiding it very observantly, or are the students having to do a lot of stuff on their own?
Absolutely. That's an amazing question. Thank you for that, Tom. This is an important point for the students as well as for the teachers, because it's important not just to make the students learn by themselves, but to teach the students how to learn, from where to learn, and how to efficiently learn rather than just study hard. We say study smart rather than just study hard.
Absolutely.
So it can take like half of the time that you study, but you study more efficiently. The amount of self-study in TMA, of course, is not very huge. The amount of guidance that they get from the teachers is huge. Because yes, it is not teacher-centered, but the guidance is immense. How? I will give you just one example now in the first semester. In the first semester that we have, the first year,
Okay.
Our curriculum is based in such a way that students take whatever is called the growth-oriented test, which is every third week, and that's a test that doesn't have marks. So it's not a summative assessment. So they don't get marks on that quiz. Basically, it's a quiz. They write the test, and the test is upon that test, the teacher will give feedback to the students. So before the actual test, which is the midterm exam and the final exam that the students are, afraid of most of the time, our students would have had enough experience with tests and enough feedback on which are the strong points that they should make even stronger and which are the points that need improving and need to work on even better. That's one thing that guidance happen. We have also the portfolio in the line of the clinical skills and the clinical competencies, where each group of students are allocated with a mentor. That mentor will work with them for the 6 years. The same mentor will work with them. They will work with them on self-reflection. They will work with them on personal development plans. All of that, as well as listening to them with any issues they have during studying, guiding them on how to study, guiding them on ways for efficient studies.
Fantastic. And I love to hear that you're, as teachers, you're doing these sort of small quizzes, and instead of just giving them back a mark, and saying, look, you only got 5 out of 10, work on it. You're instead saying, no, we're not going to give you a mark on this. We're just going to tell you this area you need to look at a bit more. This area you need to focus on a bit more. Yeah, it sounds like you put more effort into the teaching than a lot of places, which again saves the student time. Because it's like you said before, you have to study smart, not hard. And how are the students meant to study smart if the feedback they're getting is not smart? So yeah, it's a great thing to hear. Is that something that you had as a student as well, or is this one of the new things that's been implemented?
This is one of the things that made me think of going back and studying from the beginning.
Because you didn't get that.
No, we had a little bit more of a teacher-centered approach where we had only quizzes, and the quizzes just, you get the mark or you don't get the mark. And that's it.
Yeah. And how much easier would it have been for you, do you think, if you had this kind of guidance?
I would have loved to hear what should I work on better, because, as a student, yes, now we're looking back at our, younger times, and we're looking back at our mistakes, and we said, okay, this is the mistake in that. That's
the gift of hindsight.
Yeah, absolutely. In hindsight, everything is showing. But at that time, with being 18, with all the things that the teenager go through, and all the things around you, and also having to study medicine, which everybody says it's quite difficult and the most difficult specialty in the world, and so on and so forth. You won't have social life, and you won't have fun. All of that makes such, stress. And I would have loved to just to hear from the teachers extensive feedback as it is given now. Of course, they used to give us feedback back then, but, back then it wasn't as extensive. It wasn't as personalized, because now each student meets with the teacher by themselves, one-to-one, and then discuss it. Also, the mentors, each mentor of each group would schedule a meeting with each student one-on-one, discuss their self-reflection, discuss their personal development plan, and what action plan they have to improve themselves.
Wow. It really is a student focus. You can tell that you have students making some of these big decisions or influencing these decisions, because this is something that... so much effort on the teachers.
Let me tell you, Tom, sorry to interrupt you, but it takes...
No, go for it.
It takes a huge effort and time from teachers' time and the mentors' time as well. But with the help of the students, and with the students' compliance, and the students having the motivation to go through, and actually being motivated, it just makes the journey for the teacher enjoyable, and for the student as well.
Yeah. Wow, what an experience for them to have. And obviously these are some things that are quite unique about Tbilisi Medical Academy, aren't they? Would you say there are other points that you can think of now that make the university quite different from the rest?
Absolutely. During my years, we had like a clinical skills lab, which was a quite small lab, but we had the clinical skills during the first 3 years. So the way it is, just for the our dear listeners, the way it is in Tbilisi Medical Academy, that the first 3 years are called the basic medical knowledge years, where you study the basic disciplines of medicine, like physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, and so on and so forth, as well as clinical skills. You have to have clinical skills before you go to the clinics. And then the second 3 years, you spend it almost 99.9% of those years, the classes, everything are spent in the hospitals. So it is divided into clinical rotations, where you rotate on different specialties like internal medicine, then surgery, and then ophthalmology, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, with the help of our experts and the evidence-based and the best practices that we see around the world, and all the research and the studies that we have seen, as early as possible to expose the students to the clinical setting is the best. So during my years, we had just clinical skills on mannequins and, just suturing and so on and so forth on a piece of plastic, which was fun as well for us. But now it's a quite different story. We have whatever is called the early clinical exposure. From the first year, the students will go to clinics. They will be assigned to a clinician in the clinics, and they will, of course, they will not diagnose and examine and so on. But at first, communication is the most important. To observe the professional behavior of a doctor with their patient, and to observe the communication between the doctor and the patient. That is the most important. So as early as the first year, they go to the clinics. Other than that, in the clinical skills center that we have revitalized it into such a way that we have whatever is called simulated patients, which are basically actors that are paid to come and act specific scenarios that the students have to conduct the medical interview with them. They have to examine them, and so on and so forth. So they would act as patients. That it doesn't stop here, Tom. I know that I talk too much about it, but it doesn't stop here.
Not at all. This is why people are listening.
Yeah. The most thing that I like the most, actually, is whatever called the standardized patient, which is different from the actors. These are real patients who have chronic diseases most of the time. So that means it's a disease that has a long, period. It's always, almost always with the patient. The symptoms are with the patient. So it's possible to invite those patients. Of course, they get paid, and the students would actually find the real pathologies. For example, like hear the murmur of a patient, on the real sound of the murmur in a patient, or the emphysema, for example, for a smoker who had, which is one of the diseases, of course, but it changes how you listen to the lungs, and it changes the sounds that the lungs makes, and it's quite interesting to hear it in real life. And this is as early as the first few years in medical school. So usually in early medical years, you just study the terminology and so on back then. But nowadays, no. We have whatever is called the early clinical exposure, and we have whatever is called the integration weeks as well.
Wow. So multiple ways of allowing students to get early access to clinical exposure, when most MD courses in Europe have nothing until the third year. That is quite a difference. What sort of difference do you see in the students? Because again, I'm guessing this is something that you didn't have so much as when you started.
Absolutely. Students are
So
more
what impact
motivated.
does this have?
Yeah,
More
yeah.
motivation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Usually, it motivates the students on actually, getting into it because yes, they go to the clinics, they see the role models that they want to become, which are the doctors, and they see the environment. So they have a good expectation, not unreal expectation, because many of the students, let's be honest, they have expectations that are based on TV shows, like Grey's Anatomy or The Good
Yeah.
Doctor or Doctor House, which is not the reality. That's all Hollywood, and it's good to watch, but to have the real expectation and to have in your mind a certain goal and to be motivated towards that goal, it's quite a huge difference, makes a huge difference for the students.
100%. I love it when I'm speaking with a student, and I get this on many occasions when they tell me that they've had active work experience. If they've worked as a healthcare assistant or they've worked even as a receptionist, in a surgery, just to know that they've seen some of that environment, they've spoken to some doctors and had some of that experience. It just goes a long way. And do you see the actual difference in terms of their clinical, when you're assessing their clinical abilities in the fourth, fifth, and sixth year? Do you see a difference because of what they've been exposed to before?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a huge difference, for example, from my batch and from the current batches that are having clinical skills and early clinical exposure because they have, as I mentioned, better motivation, but not just that. They have better skills as well because they started from early on and to be a professional in it. Of course, as early as you can start, the best you can do is that. So it is, of course, quite helpful for the students and the skills that they show, the professionalism that they show. So it's not just the skills and knowledge, but the most important also that any doctor nowadays in the 21st century that should have is the competencies to what makes a good doctor. That is the question that we ask the students, the new students that we have all the time, and it's not one answer because multiple things that the students must get. The students must have these competencies like professionalism, like being a good communicator, like being a team member and a collaborator, and at sometimes a leader, like being a good scholar, which lots of things among these big titles. There's lots of small subtitles.
Don't worry. It's the great thing about doing these live.
I apologize. I have 5
Don't
dogs,
worry at
and
all.
sometimes it's impossible to control all of them.
Of course, no, don't worry. I completely understand. That's absolutely fine. So moving on from there then, another thing that a lot of students are always asking us about is exchange programs. It's great that they're obviously getting early clinical experience. They're getting a lot of well-guided lectures. But with yourselves at Tbilisi Medical Academy, what is it like on the exchange programs and how does it work?
Exchange program are one of the most important for the students because it's always fun. It's always good to have experience in a different university, and we do have exchange programs with most of our partner universities in Europe. Now we're trying to expand on it, and we're trying to work with embassies and have in different countries because some students, because we always get feedback from the students. We always ask the students as well what is the most important for them, what do they want as well. So lots of students have shown that they want to have some exchange program in their own, for example, countries, or some kind of observerships in their own countries, which is during the clinical years. So we are working on having that with the countries of our students that we have. through the embassies as well. We're working on it, but of course we do have the Erasmus Plus, the European Union's exchange programs that are funded by the European Union, as well as other bilateral agreements with our partner universities in Europe, mostly in Europe. And our students, you can visit our Facebook page, and you can see the blogs that our students write after they have gone through the exchange programs and talking about their experiences.
Great. Can you tell us any details about a recent program?
For example, I think the most recent was in Turkey, in Ataturk University. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, around 25 students, both international and Georgian students, have gone into a clinical rotation in different departments like cardiology, urology, and internal medicine, where they shadowed doctors, and they gained experience, and they gained, of course, certificates. I believe it was a short period, so it was, I think, for a month rotation, and that's the students were quite delighted about it. Of course, we do have with Lithuania. The one before that was, I believe, in Lithuania.
Okay. Wow. So quite a varied amount. And obviously, when people hear exchange programs, you know the students get very excited about it. But from your perspective as a teacher, what is the actual benefit of students going to do these types of programs?
So the student gets experience from different cultures. They get experience from different styles of teaching, because, different universities in different countries or in the same countries, they have different styles of teaching, of course, which always gives the student to open their mind better, to appreciate what they have, or maybe to bring back some suggestions that might work in our context, for example. So it's a very, very interesting experience for the students, especially that they can create a very good network that will help them further their career during after graduation, and during their residency and postgraduate study. So I believe that it's a huge experience.
Great. Yeah, no, I'm not surprised about what you've said there, and with it being able to have an effect on people in terms of the different teaching styles, different cultures, even witnessing different languages, and how hospitals run in different countries, because there can always be small variations. So it's amazing that you can get that level of diversity during the course. And of course, with the Erasmus programs all being funded by the EU, students don't have to worry about having to pay an arm and a leg for having to, go and study and do these additional experiences, because it's all covered. Now, is there usually some sort of a system where you will choose students to do this, or will you allow them to choose? What's the situation with that?
So it's usually a transparent process that we open a call for an exchange program that is available. Of course, like with Erasmus Plus, there are quite certain requirements that are set by the European Union, as well as by the university, the hosting university. And we do also set our own requirements and standards. Students, if they meet the criteria, then a committee will select the students upon their the different criteria, as well as the motivation, as they have to write a motivational letter and attach whatever can support their application in going into the exchange program. And to touch a little bit about the funding, as it is very important. For example, in the during the Turkey rotation and the Turkey in the Ataturk exchange program with our university students. Actually, our university, Tbilisi Medical Academy, had funded some part of the journey for the students, just to decrease the financial burden, if any. Of course, it is funded. They didn't have to pay for it anywhere else, but they also funded some, so to say, social aspect of their trip.
Yeah, because the social parts are important as well. You've got to be able to go to restaurants, and I'm not just talking on exchanges now, but in general. What kind of social parts does the university bring? You know, people, especially I've got my students from the UK, they're used to having all these societies and these clubs and different things that they can do that are all organized by the university. What sort of thing have you got there with TMA?
That's a great question, Tom. Thank you for that. It is not very much different from what you have mentioned. Of course, during the pandemic, everything slowed down and almost to a complete halt. But thankfully, and thank God that now we're back to normal, somewhat back to normal. We do have our student union, which is also called the Student Academy, the name after the
Very nice
academy. Yeah. And of course, it is funded by the academy. They have their own budget, and they do have a certain structure, which is a horizontal structure rather than a president. We have a committee of the union, of the student union, to make the decision making in a horizontal way, where everybody is equal in making decisions among the union. And they do have the clubs. For example, we have the Eco Club, which is concerned with planetary health and the health of our environment. And of course, environment's health impacts the human health. So it's quite an important cause for us, as
Absolutely.
well as lots of clubs like the First Aid and Emergency Club that have been just formed, the Sports Club. And within those clubs, of course, there are smaller clubs like Football Club, which is a little bit different from Rugby Club, as rugby is quite famous here in Georgia and adored in Georgia. Football and rugby are the top. So yeah, even for example, among our lovely Indian students, we do have the cricket club and the cricket teams, and also the lots of other clubs like the art clubs and so on.
Fantastic. And what the university has a direct role in managing and organizing this alongside the student union and helping them to facilitate that.
Absolutely. So the decision is up to the students. That's why it is a student-oriented and student-centered institution. So the students take decision in a lot of things, including their social life. The Students Academy or the Students Union is just a facilitator to bring the students' opinions and bring the students' ideas. So all students of the academy, their ideas, and then basically just making it and organizing it into a package where we can, of course, support our students and fund our students into making it into a reality, real projects. Like just recently, we had a project where our students went along with some of the teachers and our academic staff as well to remote villages in Georgia to observe how the village doctors work. And it was mixed interdisciplinary project where medicine meets art, in that they were trained in photography and went to those villages and took pictures depicting the story of the village doctor. What do they go through? What needs do they need? Hopefully that it would reach to a certain party or certain position that they might also, of course, support the village doctors more and facilitate their immense work that they do. Is such a huge work that they do, and it's different from the cities. It's quite interesting experience that opens up the students. They look at their career, they look at life in a different way.
Yeah, because a lot of students, they want to get experiences like that, and many are not fortunate enough, to be able to get experiences in other countries and to go to rural places where they have a very different type of infrastructure when it comes to medical professionalism compared to what they've known in their countries and in their cities. So that's amazing that they get to do that and actually bring that awareness back for more people to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Tom. A lot of times, once again, it goes back to the expectation of the students. They always expect that uh, they're going to be working in a huge hospital in the middle of the city, and just having that experience doesn't mean that you have to go and become a village doctor, of course, but just having that experience changes a lot of things that how you think about, and a lot of priorities for you in life and priorities for you in your career. So it's just an amazing experience for the students to have, and we are so glad that we have our students that are willing and motivated, and they were it was a huge motivation to learn photography from them. Medical students and photography, you might say, what's what's
Not a usual combination.
yeah, what's the relationship? No, we have a huge uh, um, uh, we have a huge focus on medicine and art in TMA. We love it. So always, for example, during our awareness campaigns, we enroll students, for example, to draw. For example, the last was about breast cancer awareness, and we had survivors from one of the centers of breast cancer awareness raising, and the survivors came to TMA, and we went to their center, and it was just an amazing experience as well, because it makes the future doctor, which is the student, who might be an oncologist, make them understand what the survivors felt, for example, during the time that the diagnosis was given to that patient, because that was a huge emotional, actually, impact on how the students were looking at cancer, and giving bad news to the patients.
Absolutely. What an optional thing to have, when people think of societies, and as we said, football and rugby, but then you look at this and you're blending this art and you're using it to build awareness and to actually see the emotions, because another really important aspect of medicine that a lot of people don't realize in the beginning is empathy. It's being able to understand the patients, understand what are they going through, what's going on in their heads, and how can they help them and support them with that. And do you feel like these extra activities help people in that respect?
Absolutely, Tom. You have touched on a very important point, which is empathy, how to be a human and how to be a doctor. And there is this very difficult balance that you have to balance between not to get too much involved, but yet still be human and still feel empathy for the patient. Because if you get too involved, then you will have burnout, and that's what we're trying to teach our students. And if you don't have empathy and you just basically be a robot and just do it in a routine way, then you won't succeed with your patient. Your patient will not open up with you. You won't have a good relationship with your patient, and the compliance, which is very important, the compliance of your patient will not be as good if you don't have empathy. And of course, it's the angels of treating patients. That's what they used to say, the angels of life, and doctors are angels. It comes down to humanity, basically. And such experiences that we offer to our students, and we indulge our students in, and we basically just mix with the community and mix with the patient, and go to the extra mile to create such great humans first, and then doctors second.
I love that. Humans first, doctors second. It's a very powerful message and such an important one. Well, look, I think we've gone over many, many, many things today. You've given us such an incredible insight. So thank you so much for giving us this. And I want to wrap up by, I mean, that quote was amazing. I almost just want to say, leave it there. But I do want to hear from you. I want to ask you this one last question. What advice are you going to give to prospective students, to the people listening now that are thinking about going to do this? What advice would you give them in terms of making the decision, but also in terms of when they begin and what they can sort of overcome?
A great question, Tom, and this is to all students, whoever goes wherever, and especially, of course, those who are coming to TMA. Rest assured that I'll talk about TMA and Georgia in general. Rest assured that Georgia is one of the safest countries on the world, so that part you won't have to think about or worry about much. And my advice to you is to keep an open mind, to new experiences, to new people, to new culture, to new language, to learn from that rather than just, we're all of us are used to a certain standard of life, or all of us are used to standard culture, all of us are used to our friends at school and so on. But take that experience with you and let it build you as a human, let it build you as a person that wants to reach a certain goal in your life. And you might find lots of things about yourself that you haven't known before without doing that experience. And that happened to me, as well as a lot of my friends and a lot of people, a lot of students that I know during my time. So my advice to you is keep an open mind and be optimistic, and as well as realistic at the same time. But open-mindedness is the most important that I can think of right now.
Dr. Saif Rustum, thank you so much for your insight once again. And to everyone listening, this has been Students and our podcast, obviously from a doctor this time, but in the future upcoming episodes, we're going to be talking to students. We're going to be hearing from other medical professionals in various specialties and a bunch of people all related to the industry. For those of you wanting to hear more from Dr. Saif, I'm sure he's going to be joining us on some webinars. He is more than happy to share his experience, which is amazing for us. We really hope that we've been able to impact some of you out there, give you some kind of idea of what kind of experience you're going to have, and really help you on this journey. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.